Hey, thanks for joining us. I'm Lou Brutus from the world famous Hard Drive and Hard Drive XL. Sam Carter from Architects joining me now from the UK. Sam,
Hello.
it's good to see you. How are you?
I'm very well. It's a sunny day. I've just been for a run. For the one time I'm allowed outside for the day in Plague Island, where we live at the moment. So making the most of it.
You are in Brighton, if I remember correctly, right?
Yes, yeah, right on the seafront. Yeah, it's lovely, man. It's lovely.
You know, whenever I speak to anybody from Brighton, I almost ask them to act as a member of the tourist board because it's one of the coolest places in all of England, and
man.
certainly. And it's a magnet for musicians and artists of all stripes. Give some background on Brighton because it's a pretty amazing place.
Oh, it's such an amazing pool of art, music, and creatives. Really, I think it's you can't really move for a shop being independent. I mean, all of the lanes, all of the shops that we have around here. It's it's amazing. It's just really cool to see so many people creating something for themselves and working with their art. And it's the same with bands. There's so many amazing bands that have come out from Brighton, and we're all sort of, basically wandering around like zombies at the moment, trying to figure out what to do with ourselves.
Well, you refer to it as Plague Island, and currently in the UK, you guys are going through a pretty nasty wave of the new variation of Corona. What are the circumstances like for you, just as a citizen there? Let's put the musician part aside. What do you have to deal with?
We're in the third lockdown now that we've had. They've sort of loosened it up, and then it's come back and loosened it up. And so right now it's sort of everywhere's shut other than places for takeaway food and deliveries. So no pubs are open and restaurants and stuff, and nowhere, you can't go shopping or anything. And you can't go around other people's houses. You just got to stay in your own home. So it's pretty intense, but I'm just grateful for my health and my family's health, and just trying to do the right thing over here, and mask up and when I go outside, and just look out for others, really.
Is Brighton originally where you're from and where you grew up?
Yeah. I've spent my whole adult life here. My mum and dad, my dad's from sort of just in the middle of London, and my mum was from Manchester, in Burnley, just outside of Manchester. And I've been brought up down here on the south coast.
Well, if I may pry, what did or do mom and dad do for a living?
My dad was a police officer, and then he worked in one of the airports, doing with the sniffer dogs, sniffing out bombs and drugs. And my mum works in a doctor's surgery, so her life's pretty full on right now.
Was it a very musical household growing up? Did either of your parents play anything, or was there a lot of music around to listen to? And if so, what did you sort of grasp onto or absorb?
Oh man, yeah, there was so much music, and it's so influential, and still is. Our house was the Stones, Beatles, Zeppelin, Wings, nonstop. Steely Dan. My dad has such an incredible record collection, and now mine looks almost identical to his. So it's super cool, and we buzz off the same things and the same reissues, and it's really cool.
So at what point do you go from, hey, mom and dad are listening to some really cool stuff, to, wait a minute, I love this and I want to do it myself?
Yeah, I think I started learning the drums when I was about 13 years old. And it was a really, for me, it was a no-brainer. I just had too much energy and was so, I just wanted to have a release. And I was like a normal kid. I grew up in quite a small village outside of Brighton. So it was just a lot of hanging out and skateboarding, and just me and my friends all got into similar kind of bands at the same time, and I just one day was just desperate to. In fact, I fell in love with Travis Barker from Blink. I remember watching a music video of theirs and being I want to play drums like that. And then I started having drum lessons, and A few of my other friends were getting guitar and bass lessons at the same time. And then, we'd meet up once a week and jam. And from there, really, I just sort of completely fell in love with it. And if I'm honest, I wasn't really good at anything else at all. It was pretty obvious that I was really creative in that element, but everything else seemed quite hard for me. So I just was like, this is my only way of doing it. This is going to be my job. And I remember literally like having a discussion with people at school and being like, one day I'm going to be on fucking Warped Tour and you guys can fuck off. And then I remember when we did Warped Tour, I was like, fuck, I've made it to this like biblical place. When we were growing up in England, like Warped Tour was like the coolest fucking thing ever, when you heard Blink singing about it and stuff. So to actually be on it was a proper life tick. And I don't think I can really believe everything that's happened since then. So yeah, it's been a wild journey, really.
Well, where did you make the transition? Because it's one thing to, hey, I like music. I'm going to get together with some friends from school and we're going to do some cover songs and we're going to play in the garage or whatever it is. Where do you go from that to, hey, I can actually write and do my own original stuff? And then there's the next step of, now I want to do it for a living. How do I actually sort of get a career out of all this?
Yeah, it was really, I think the thing that was interesting is, especially around then, there wasn't too many people that were like musical in my little town. There was a few bands, and those bands were so interchangeable. If someone was like ill or someone didn't want to do a certain style of music, it would be like, okay, cool, I'll jump ship and try something out there. And a lot of the time, the four bands that were there were probably five people, but just like switching around doing different styles of music. So I just remember one day, like the singer that was in the band that I played with when I was in school left, and I was like, okay, I'll try and play drums and like scream and sing along to whatever we're doing. And I think that's where I kind of learned how to sing and kind of figure out how
at that point.
Yeah. And you start to like write your own lyrics and write your own songs. And then after that, a few years on, I was probably like 17, 18, something like that. And then Bring Me the Horizon played in my in Brighton in like a local venue that we had. And my band that I'd started that sounded like Hopesful at the time opened up the show, and the boys from Architects were at the show and their singer had quit the night before. And they saw me singing for this new band, and then the rest is history. They asked me to try out.
Sam, let's talk about some of the recent stuff for Architects. First of all, the video from Royal Albert Hall. That's another place, much like your home of Brighton, that I think you should give some background on to folks in the United States who might not be familiar. The Royal Albert Hall is sort of a holy music temple, I think, for folks over in the UK. So background on the Royal Albert Hall and then specifics about your involvement there.
Well, the Royal Albert Hall has always been, it's a name that's kind of known throughout the entire rock world, but in England, it's like the venue. It's like Wembley, but it's way more intimate. It's way tighter. And actually as a venue, it's so beautiful. And everyone that is everyone has played there. It's like Bob Dylan's got records from there. The Beatles played there in '63. Jimi Hendrix has played there. It's like everyone who's everyone has played there. And to be able to play that venue is special, but to be able to play that venue with nobody in it is insane, because it's like you're playing to ghosts. Like the fact that you can just focus on how grandiose the place is. It was amazing. But I think the thing with us was we don't like to do anything by half measures, and it's like to do a live stream, we wanted it to be really, really special, and we also wanted it to be exciting for us. So Royal Albert Hall felt like the right time for us to do it, and the right place to show off new music and show off what would essentially have been a tour, because we would have been on tour at that point showing off these new songs. And we wanted to show people where we were at as a band, and also felt like it worked with the new songs as well. And it was so special, and it was something that we sorted out ourselves. We didn't have any promoters. We were on the calls, we were getting hold of production teams, and we were booking the venue. And yeah, it was amazing how it came out, and the support that we received from everybody, and how kind everyone was really special.
If you would, I've been outside the Royal Albert Hall a couple of times. I've made pilgrimages there on trips to London, but I've never gotten to see anything. What is it like backstage? What is it like behind the scenes? What are the dressing rooms like? You've already touched a little bit on the vibes there, but It's certainly one of those venues that you can feel the history coming out of the walls.
It's amazing, man. It's like the dressing room. So the whole venue is kind of like a ring. And then around when you go off stage left or stage right, you kind of go into this hallway, and around the hallway there is a photo of everyone that's played there. And we're talking like you're literally looking at rock royalty and pop royalty as you're walking down there. And then you're like, okay, we're about to go on stage and play the heaviest shit possible, which is a nice feeling. I think it's cool for them to have a really heavy band play there. And, we've done some stuff at Abbey Road before as well. And I know every single band that's recorded at Abbey Road. And I love going into those places and being the band that we are, because it feels like you're kind of making your own sort of history by going in there and doing that. And knowing like, yeah, I played at Royal Albert Hall and I played at Abbey Road, and we were the heaviest bands to do it. It's definitely not something you take for granted.
Particularly being a heavy band, were there any tricks to getting the sound right? Because, Royal Albert Hall, for example, is extremely well designed. It has beautiful acoustics, but those acoustics were designed based upon there being bodies out in those seats, very different from what you guys did. And I would imagine that was a bit tricky for your sound folks.
Yeah, man, for sure. I think the best part of the set for us was when we were in the middle of the room and we did like two or three acoustic songs down there. Yeah. And I just took my in-ears out because I've sat in the middle and it's just echoing and reverberating around the room, and it just sounded incredible. And I think the best thing we did was we had Zach that mixed our album. He did the live stream as well, because he's become so used to us and what we sound like. And yeah, he absolutely nailed it, man. We had no PA out the front, so there was no bleed around the room. So the microphones were just picking up everything we were doing, and everything was like in our ears. So for anyone that was in the room that didn't have their ears on for their monitors, it would have just sounded like Dan playing drums and me shouting over the top. So until we went into the middle of the room, and then it probably sounded beautiful.
Well, have you ever attended a concert before where you were able, actually concert or studio, where there was an artist that you really enjoyed a lot, that you perhaps grew up on, that you got to hear them without amplification, that you were close enough to them to hear them purely without any electricity in between you and them? Because those can be some special moments.
Yeah, for sure, man. I think we've been really fortunate throughout the years to have done some amazing festivals and played some amazing shows with people. I think one of the coolest things is probably seeing Motörhead from the side of stage, and that band doesn't need a PA out front. I swear to God. I mean, they really didn't. I think I think what people need to understand is probably out front you were just getting drums and Lemmy, and on stage, I mean, they didn't need to mic up those amps because the floor was like rumbling. And I'm talking like you're on these stages in like Europe that get put up for these festivals. Like those stages are not meant to take that level of bass, and you're stood there like, that's how you fucking do it. That's how you fucking do it. So yeah, those moments like that are really cool where you just think like, fuck, I'm literally like watching these absolute legends play, and yeah, and especially, obviously now that he's passed away, you just think back to that, and I just think, there was a man there that just truly loved what he did. And like, it wasn't an act, that man was turning it up,
And I would say, as an aside, that for as ferocious as Motorhead's music was, Lemmy offstage was soft spoken and a real gentleman.
Absolutely, yeah, man. He just seemed, just like him walking up, genuinely had a Jack and Coke in his hand and was just walking up to the stage with a cigarette, and then literally plugged in his bass and all hell broke loose. It was amazing.
Yeah, he was one of the people that I describe as a living embodiment of rock and roll. Like the rock god said, let music take on the guise of a human being, and then poof, I don't think he was born. I think he just appeared one day, and then poof, he was gone many years later,
Yeah, it's just like he was just born a hero. There was no childhood for him. It was just like, you're a rock star. This is what you have to do.
Now then, we've talked about history, we've talked about Royal Albert Hall, but let us talk about the new album for those that wish to exist. First of all, where and how do you create this, given the circumstances that you have described earlier in this interview? Let's talk about the nuts and bolts of actually like getting everything together.
Yeah, man, it happened at a very strange time for us, really, because we had booked in time after a show. We had one show this year in January. And that was like, I think January the 10th or something. So maybe like the anniversary of the show is today. But we were in Australia, and Dan, our drummer at the time, was planning on moving to Australia. So after that show, we had booked in time where me, Ali, and Josh and Adam were going to spend some time over there, and we were going to do two weeks of writing. And then I don't know if you remember, but there was those fires that were happening in Australia, which like ravaged the whole place. And the place where we were staying wasn't safe. So we had to move from there after that show, and we went to Bali because that was quite close. It was a place where Dan and Ali had been before, and they loved it. And yeah, we rented a villa over there, and we stayed there for 2-3 weeks, and we did a lot of writing there. And at the end of us writing there, when me and Ali were flying home, it was when we first started seeing people wearing masks, and we first started hearing about coronavirus. And I was like, what are these people doing wearing masks? Like, this isn't no big deal. Like, fuck it, it's going to be, going to be over before it starts. It's just going to be like a cold. And then when we landed back home, that's when things started to ramp up. And then before you knew it, there was, the first lockdown in the UK. And Dan got the last flight out of Bali back to the UK. And then, thank God we had that time to write together over there. And the fact that we'd already been doing stuff before that really helped. And then when we got back, we had to work remotely, doing a lot of emails, a lot of phone calls, and a lot of time with me and Dan in the studio in Brighton together. And then the boys recording their guitars at home, and then having them reamped in other studios, and Dan going and recording drums by himself. And then, just a lot of emails being sent back and forth, and then me and Dan working together really intensely in Brighton when we could, be in the same room, because there were occasions where you could be in the same room if it was for work, when you didn't have to do, if you couldn't do stuff from home. So yeah, we really had to work around the guidelines that were there to complete the record. But yeah, thankfully we had a lot of time together where we were really focused and collaborative before all that stuff started. So we managed to work our way around it.
Was there ever any worry or trepidation during the early portions of the recording that you thought, man, this just isn't going to work? Or was it fairly immediate once you started to get tracks like, oh, hey, this is okay, it still vibes very well? Yeah,
I think because we had demoed pretty much the majority of the record before we actually were fully recording. We knew it would work. It was just being able to get the drums done in the studio was key, because it was, it's a great studio that Dan recorded in Devon. And then once we had worked out that we could record vocals with just me and Dan, because we had done that on Holy Hell already, but this time we had done it so that the studio that we worked in Brighton is the same studio we've been rehearsing in since we were kids. So they just gave us the keys and were like, you can come and go when you please. Like, they trust us. We've been there since we were like 17 years old. So yeah, it was just, me and him arriving at separate times and me going in the booth and us starting to work. It was really cool.
Just without getting too deep into the weeds, technically, what are the differences between getting vocals and guitars as opposed to getting drums? Because getting proper drum sounds can be a hell of a lot trickier. And this has been a problem for recording artists since the 1930s and 40s. What are the differences to trying to sort of key that in correctly?
I think the thing is with drums is it's so organic. There's no way around it. It has to be, there is ways around it, of course, but I think we pride ourselves on having like a really natural, punchy drum sound. And those are the drum sounds that we've loved and grown up on. So we really fell in love with the drum sound on Holy Hell and what that room down in Devon, Middle Farm Studios, is such an amazing, amazing drum room. Even just sitting in that room playing drums, it sounds ridiculous. But I think with guitars, they've come on, especially with, with Kempers and with reamping, as long as you have the stem of you playing guitar, the DI, you can plug it through as many amps as you want until you find the dream sound, whereas I still think with drums, there's something about being in that room and picking that snare drum and picking which cymbals need to go where and how they're going to sound. It's fun, but yeah, I feel for guitarists because there is so much choice.
A quick aside, and you might not have a good answer, so we can move on quickly. Why do from time to time people seem to revel in dumping on Metallica drum sounds? Like a couple of times a year online, I will see the snare drum on this album, blah blah blah, and I'm like, what? Yeah. Don't they like these? Are all great records.
Yeah, well, I think for anyone that has that, just listen to the Black Album's drum sound and shut the fuck up. It's the best drum sound ever. It's so fucking good. I think Metallica is an easy band for people to want to have a jab at, but it's just so stupid. They've done so much for this scene and for this genre, and everyone can have a dumb album every now and then. Especially at the time, I think a lot of people take shots at Saint Anger because of the film, and I'm sure they, if they had the choice now, the film probably wouldn't have come out. But they were different times, it was a tough time to be a band. They were getting a new bass player. It's like, it's an interesting one, but I mean, like, Metallica are fucking best, so one of the few metal bands that can sell out fucking stadiums around the world and are like a household name, and that's so cool for our scene. It's just like, just fuck off. Everyone wants to have a shot at Lars because Lars stood up for. This is the thing that blows me away. I remember being like a younger and reading about the Napster situation, and everyone wanted to have a pop at Lars, and it's like, no, like he literally saved the metal scene because we rely on people buying our records. But everyone wants to have a shot at him. But he's honestly one of the best dudes. I've met him a couple of times and I have nothing but lovely things to say about him.
Yeah, two quick things based on that answer. One of which is many of those who dump on Metallica, I believe the term you might use in the UK is jealous wankers. Would that be correct? Wankers? Okay, yeah, good.
Yeah.
The other thing is you're spot on about the Napster thing. One of the quotes from Lars that gets lost in the sauce quite often from back then is, listen, we've got a lot of money. We're not worried about ourselves, but there are all these bands coming up that you are going to cut off any of the money that they can make, and you're going to destroy this business. And he was fucking absolutely correct.
Yeah, spot on, man.
Yeah.
It's one of the things why I see people obviously getting annoyed about like royalties and stuff from Spotify and Apple Music and all those other streaming services. But for me, I'm just glad that we're getting something, because for a minute there, it really looked like we weren't going to get something. It really looked like, I mean, I was so young when that was happening, but if it wasn't for those moves, people could just be downloading everything for free, and then there would be no live music because no one would be, able to get out and play these shows.
Yeah, that's why when people complain, well, this band isn't cool because they're putting out a whiskey and now they have a bath salts or whatever they're putting out. And I'm like, well, you didn't want to pay them for their music. How do you expect them to put food on their table? And the other thing, and we can get off this subject after this, but when people say, well, I shouldn't have to pay for music because music is important to me. I'm like, try that in a restaurant. Oh, yeah. I shouldn't have to pay for food. I'd die without it. They tell you to fuck off,
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? When you think like this, so whenever you hear stuff like that, I just think about maybe going into whoever would say that's work and being like, can I have what you've just spent the whole day doing for free, please? In fact, you can go home. You're not getting paid. It would be a different story.
And I want it instantly at the touch of a button.
Yeah, now.
It's just, Well,
your entire back catalog right now.
Let us get back to you. Let's talk about perhaps themes on the record. And Do You Dream of Armageddon is the opener, and I think that basically sets the mood and the vibe for the record. Please tell me about the themes that come up lyrically on this album. Perhaps beginning with that opening tune.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're sort of set in the world right now on a knife's edge. And it's an interesting place to be, but it's also an interesting place to ask questions, I think. None of us have the answers, and none of us want to be shoving what we think down anyone's throat. It's merely an observation of we are at war with each other. We are at war with our climate. We're at war with pretty much anything we can get our hands on. And it's just an interesting place to be. I think, Dan wrote the lyrics for the record, but I think, he's got a young daughter now, and he, having been through everything that we've been through, your eyes open and you're like, fucking hell, like, it's not like, what can I do to save the world? One person can't do that. It's like, what are we as a group of people? How are we going to be able to save the world when we can't even have a fucking conversation with somebody we don't know without starting an argument and being like, I'm fucking right, you're fucking wrong? And I think, that's a big thing with the right and the left. It's like, then there's no conversation. There's no meet in the middle or like, oh, I hear you, but what about this? It's just, I think especially in the world of being online and being able to put something completely flippant out there and then just turning it off and moving away, it's a weird world and a weird place that we find ourselves in. So it's the record, I think, is really observing that. And I think one of the big things about it is, I think when I listen to it, at least, and I think I speak for Dan as well and the rest of the guys, I think it really depends on the mood you're in and where you're at mentally with that day, because, especially in this climate, pre-COVID, everything was fucking crazy, and now you add that into it. Some days you feel ready to take on the world, and I'm ready to have difficult conversations, and I use my platform for what I believe is good, and then some days you just want to fucking hide. And I think the good thing about the record and the fact that it feels like a kind of social commentary is when you listen to it, it can go with how you're feeling at that time, rather than being like, fuck, this is really daunting. You can relate to it, I feel.
What kind of specifics can you give me into the creation of Animals, into the recording of that tune, the creation of that tune, and then what's your actual take on the song yourself now that you've had some time to live with it?
Well, I think the main thing with Animals is it was one of the last songs that we wrote for the record. And actually, when we were putting it together, it was really interesting because I initially really wanted those verses to be really fucking heavy. And for me to just be like shouting over it and it being super industrial. When we were trying that out, it was just like, this does not work. It sounded weird. It sounded horrible. The chorus clicked straight away. It was like, that was the first idea that we put down. It didn't change. The lyrics didn't change, which is straight from the demo. And we fell in love with it straight away. But yeah, with the verses, we moved towards doing like that kind of, I guess, like sort of like Mew-ish kind of vocals with the like light vocals, but with the massive industrial drums. and sort of just bouncing off each other. And it was like, this is exactly what the song needs. It's like, let the song be heavy and let the song do the talking, and, you know, let me take a step back and just say what I want to say and deliver it in a way that's impassioned. But also, I don't need to be screaming to get people's attention. You know, more often than not, the quieter you are, the harder people listen.
Yeah, you just brought you just crystallized what I was about to say. Sometimes the juxtaposition of quiet to loud actually makes it stand out more than it could if you had blood coming out of your eyeballs as you let loose.
Yeah, exactly. I think going into bits where it's like whispering before everything hits in, and whisper and singing like Nobody Can Burn a Glass Cathedral really quietly before it goes into a massive breakdown is wicked. And I just loved being experimental on this record and doing things that felt really exciting. And, you know, it's our 9th album. Not a lot of bands have 9 albums, let alone have been doing it. You know, we've been doing this since we were like 17, 18, and now we're like 30, 32, 33. It's and to have been through what we've been through, it's like you don't want to just phone it in and do another Architects record, because like that exists. That's the record that's just there. Holy Hell is there. We don't need Holy Hell Part 2. We need to do something that is creative, is exciting, and for more than anything, to get that buzz that you get when you write a song. When you're a kid and the first time you put 2-3 chords together and you're like, that's mine, you know, to be like in the position of like, yeah, that's good. Let's get an orchestra on that. Okay. And let's reverse the vocals there before it kicks in, and let's get a horn section, you know, like being able to use the platform that we have now to be creative and to create the Architects record that's in my head, you know. Because I always think the best Architects record is the next one, because otherwise it's like, why the fuck am I writing it? And why are we going to town on it? You know?
And again, as you feel the need to evolve, as you do more stuff, you've also sort of picked up greater understanding of the recording process, so you can then put that knowledge to work to create further and not burn yourselves out, I guess.
Absolutely, man. I think you know, the base of what you are. I think we're always inspired by the album cycle before, but in the sense of like what we can do live. You know, on the last record, the last album cycle, we finished with, you know, there was like 3 keyboards on stage. We were trying to make sure there was as little in the tracks that wasn't strings. But other than that, you know, we had Ali playing we had 2 keyboards up there. Dan was playing the electronic drums, set up next to his drums. Adam was playing the samples and stuff while playing guitar. You know, it's like and then when you go into the studio, you're like, okay, cool, let's elaborate on this, because that's what we were doing every night and learning those instruments there. Let's now take them into the studio and then elaborate on that, you know, and bringing that industrial element into the band, and also bringing more of that electronic side was super exciting, especially when you put a lot of organic instruments like strings and horns and bringing choirs into it. That stuff just ends up sounding so massive when you put them together.
It sure is a lot of work and effort for a job that when you originally got into it, you thought, oh, I'll be a musician. That'll be easy.
Yeah, absolutely. You're like at the start, you're like, oh yeah, like I said, like I just want to be on fucking Warped Tour. And, you know, now, you know, I'm just like, all right, I want a fucking horn section to tour with us. You know, you're like, where's the fucking choir, you know, when you need them?
By the way, quick aside as we wrap up, if you want to hear some great Travis Barker drumming, go back to one of the pre-Blink-182 bands he played with. Are you familiar with the Aquabats?
Yeah, man. Yeah, it was so cool.
Oh, yeah. You check out the record, Fury of the Aquabats, I think, with that record, and I saw that tour. His drumming on that is nuts. And at that point, they had a full horn section and stuff. It fucking crazy. Plus, they're all in superhero outfits, so you got that going too, you know?
Exactly, yeah. I mean, that was the birth of the really high-tuned snare drum. And yeah, like I remember just loving everything about that, especially that it's just so fun, so fast, but then there were real people playing music, and that's what inspired me to want to be a musician. Was it was around that time it was really like I'm not taking any shots at anyone. Like NSYNC, Backstreet Boys was like the biggest shit going, it was, big, massive songs. And then you see when I was young, Blink come out with like all the small things with the video taking the piss out of all that. And they're playing instruments. You're like, let's fucking go. I know which side I'm on. Like, I'm ready to do this.
Yeah. Every now and then rock and roll, and I include pop, I should say music in general, popular music. It just, it needs to hit the reset button every now and then, like the Ramones and the Clash did when I was a little kid, and how bands like Nirvana and Blink and Green Day did later. A couple other last things. I don't know how to put this well, but I think one of the things I've enjoyed about Architect so much is that you guys, you've been very good at being able to take negative things that have happened in your lives outside the band and turn it into great art. And I think that's been one of the compelling things for you guys in particular. I think sort of an evolution of that the last year with everything happening to everybody. How important to you in general is art in your life of any kind, music, visual, with trying to make sense of the world and get through bad things?
I think it's so incredibly important. I think life is like one big lesson. Everyone is always searching to complete it and get it done and think they have all the answers, where it's like every day I feel like is an opportunity to learn and evolve as a person. I think especially with things like losing Tom, and it was fucking horrible, but what do you do? Do you just sit there and give up and not try and push and try and take something from it and try and learn from it? Or, and that was the main thing. It was like, okay, this has given us an opportunity to make him proud. It was like, I think at the end of the day, he would have been like, how the fuck have you done this? Like, how have you created this album? Because when he left, when he died, it was like, he was Architects. He wrote all the lyrics, wrote all the songs. It was it was a tough mountain, but together as friends, the five of us pulled together and worked and learned together. And I think that's the thing. I think with art, nobody should ever be afraid to not try, because if you don't try, that's worse. If you take a shot, it might be the best shot in the world. If you don't take a shot, you'll never know. And I think especially with music and in any sort of creativity, whether it's art, poetry, writing songs, I think it's there for everyone. It's also there to make everybody feel not so alone. I think it's inspiring. And I think a big thing with especially with Holy Hell was just everybody's going to lose somebody at some point in their life, and nobody talks about it. It's almost like death is like a taboo subject, even though we're all going to die. We're all going to lose someone that we really care about. It's just, we went through a young age, and it was really tough. But I think there's probably a lot of people that felt very similar to us, that were going through the same thing, that then hear us trying to discuss what we were going through in song form. And I hope that record really helped people. And I hope that people, feel like, carrying on and carrying that fight with them, much like we did.
Well, Sam, it's been great talking music with you. I could talk music and art with you for hours and hours, but we'll call
it. That's the best thing about being in a band, is you're surrounded by people that love it just as much as you.
And that's what I love the most about my job, and there's great perks about it. I mean, I'm doing this for a long time, but I get to talk to interesting people and not just the artists, not just the people who are on stage. There are great people behind the scenes and the fans who come out. One of my favorite things when I go out to live shows, I don't hide backstage. I walk out because I want to meet other other fans? Because again, when people ask what I do for a living, I usually just say I'm a professional music fan. I'm a music fan who went pro. Like, what did you do as a kid? I memorized fucking liner notes. Like, there's nothing else I can do for a living. It's just talk to musicians about what's in their liner notes, essentially. So, I
think that's the thing as well. Especially like now, especially in this climate, you realize how much the scene means to everyone. It's like that connection of feeling like you're in a gang is so cool and so important. And yeah, I love it. And I just can't, I can't wait to be on a stage, whether it's in a fucking dive bar, a festival. Like, I just want to see someone singing our songs. That's all I miss.
Well, I can't wait to see you guys again in the flesh. And you got to promise me something. I'm going to put you on the spot here just a little bit, but I'm ashamed to say that I've never been to Brighton before, and I've been to the UK a bunch, but usually when I go over, it's to cover some festival or some show, and I fly in, I fly out.
When you're over, let's come down, man.
Oh, absolutely. I want to crawl the coast. And what is the I want to get to Portsmouth as well, which isn't too far from.
So it's like 30 minutes on a train. Yeah, easy.
Yeah. And man, you've got lots of lighthouses down there, and I love to photograph lighthouses on the South Coast. Has beautiful stuff down there. So you and me we'll bust up Brighton for a couple of nights.
We'll set the world to rights.
Excellent. Good. Sam, great to speak to you. Please stay healthy, and we will see you soon.
Awesome, man. Thank you very much. Lovely talking to you.